Hey, this is Bunny. Today we're painting the Xenogenesis Cell. We're going to do this really simple, really quick and easy. I'm going to put more water on my paint because, that helps. But usually I start with a gray. I kind of want to start with a green today because this is a really cool set, but it's not your standard set. Okay, so first of all, it's got a lot of little tiny grooves that you really got to work to get into. So I'm using a brush I don't mind destroying. Like, I have a lot of really cheap brushes, and the reason I have really cheap brushes is there's actually a lot of stuff I paint that's like this, that is very, very difficult to really get all the paint into. So that's what I'm doing now, is really getting that paint in there. You've almost got to push it in and it will destroy your brush. That's okay. This is a brush I typically use for dry brushing or doing base coats and stuff like that. So I don't really care if it gets destroyed. So you can, of course, be more careful and be more gentle with your brushes. I'm not gentle with my brushes at all. So we're only painting one half of each tile, and I'm only going to show you one of each tile because, frankly, how many times do you need to see me paint the same tile? You don't. And remember, when you're painting that, it doesn't matter what other people think at all. Like, I get a lot of comments about, oh, you're going to ruin your brushes. Yep, I know. Don't care. I have really cheap I have some really expensive, really nice brushes that I am much more careful with, right? But a brush like this, it literally comes from the dollar store, and the reason it comes from the dollar store is because I need brushes that I can just destroy, because I don't get a lot of pleasure from painting in a way that basically means you have to watch each stroke and watch your brushes and care for your brushes and all of that jazz, right? I don't really enjoy that. I would rather have fun while painting. And if that means I have to do a little bit of destruction on my brushes, that's just the way it is. It's fine. It doesn't bother me. If it bothers you, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. You should paint the way you like, right? This channel's about having fun, enjoying the process, and if you're not enjoying the process, then maybe find a way to enjoy it if it's something you still want to do. If you really want to paint, but you're not enjoying the way you're painting, maybe take it a little less seriously. Maybe decide it's okay to destroy a brush or two. Maybe decide it's okay to paint with a thicker paint today because I don't feel like going over it as many times. That's okay. Remember, we're about quick, easy, and not driving ourselves crazy over small details, right? That's what we're doing here. So I'm kind of painting this to look like a living cell, like a living creature almost. So I'm going to do like a lot of greens and oranges, and I'm probably going to take a silver dry brush with green in it, so it's still going to be green, and kind of highlight a couple of spots. I might not. I haven't quite decided yet. I don't make full decisions before I start painting. I kind of start going, and sometimes I'll abandon an idea partway through because I'm just not liking it. But we are only going to paint one of each tile. So each time we come back, you will see I have painted the other tiles as well. But how many times do you need to watch me paint the same tile? For perspective, there are 3 doors, 3 small walls, 3 of this panel. There are 3 of the big floors, 3 of the big walls. You don't need to watch me paint the same thing 3 times in a row. So what we'll do is, as soon as I'm done this piece, this portion of this piece, we'll come back to do the other section. And you will notice I have painted all those lovely things in between, right? You'll notice that I go and paint all the other tiles while we're off camera. But for right this second, we are going to let those dry, come back and do the other side of each of those tiles. Okay, let's keep going. That's nice and dry. And then we'll just slam. And this is a good time to look and see the difference between a paint when it's wet versus a paint when it's dry. So most paints tend to darken. So you can see that does not look the same. This is the same color out of the same bottle. So what color am I using? It's permanent green. It is the same color. Okay? It just looks different because it's not dry. So it's a good time to show that you can't go with what the paint looks like when it's wet. Okay? There is no way that the paint will look like that when it's dry. Very few paint colors dry the way they look when they're wet. Okay? Most of them do undergo at least some changes, and colors like green tend to be very different. Okay? So I knew this was a darker color, a darker green, even though it doesn't look like it when it's wet. There we go. Let's just get that on there. And for these guys, we are going to have to let them dry completely before we turn them over. And when we do turn them over, we obviously don't have to paint the floor pieces. So we're only going to have to paint the walls to get the green on the other side. Here we go. And this guy, I like this green. I actually really love this green. When it dries, I don't like that paler green that it looks like when it's wet. I really don't. But I love this green when it dries. It has such depth to it. And remember, we're focusing on quick and easy, right? We're focusing on, we don't need a ton of time to paint something passable, right? We don't have to worry. Now, when I'm painting, sometimes I do paint things that are quite involved, but most of the time, we kind of just want to paint it and forget. So that is it for, I'm only showing you one piece each of me painting them because there's no point in you watching the rest. I will paint up the rest and we will come back as soon as that layer is completely dry. Then we'll flip over the walls and do the other side. Okay, let's turn these over and get the other side painted, shall we? Because it's always a good time. Now for this base coat, again, I'm using a junk brush. A junk brush that I don't care if I ruin. So it's a good idea to have some of those because I don't care if this brush gets destroyed. I care if it gets paint on the spots it needs to get paint on. That's all I care about. There we go. And remember, I only am painting a handful of the pieces on camera just because you really don't need to watch me paint the same piece 3 times per piece because each variation has 3 panels. So we're not going to watch all of them because it's boring. It's boring for me, and I'm the one doing the painting. It's boring. So we're just going to get these parts of these painted. There we go. And flipping this one over. And then we'll come back and do the final bit of green. Okay? We're not doing too much. This is a really easy set to paint, even though it looks like it might be hard, because there's a lot of detail. I'm going to solve the it's kind of difficult to paint problem, mostly by not painting too much of the detail. Sometimes when you're just bogged down in details, just kind of ignore some of them. You can highlight them with a wash later. Anyway, we'll come back when that's dry. I'll paint the other pieces. We do not have to paint the floor pieces because they don't have to be turned over. So we'll come back just as soon as that is dry and paint the other part of the walls. Well, that's dry. We get to finish these pieces now. And then we will pick another color. I'm looking at doing an orange and kind of a silver, kind of a deep silver. I'm probably going to grab a silver and then maybe tinge it with a little black, to be honest. I think that might be a combo that I enjoy. I've done it before where you add a little black to your metallic. I might do that just to darken the silver just a little bit, not a ton, just enough. So I think that's what I'm going to do, that and an orange, and then do a silver green as a highlight and do either a sepia or an umber wash, probably umber this time. It's a little darker than sepia, so I might go that way. There we go. Anyway, we will come back when this is all completely dry. I'll finish the other pieces off camera because I can. So I will finish the other pieces off camera and we will come back for you in just a few seconds and keep going. All right, let's keep going. So now that the green is dry, I'm actually going to add some orange. I know that this is a lot brighter than I normally paint these kind of things, but I really want this orange. I really like bright colors. They might not think that from the last few things I've painted, but I do really like bright colors. So I really did want to paint some kind of room. This is the Xenogenesis Cell. And I wanted to paint something bright and crazy. And this one seemed like a good option, because I do like the bright. So we're just going to gently, you do want to be gentle and careful, because with your base coat it doesn't matter, right? Your base coat does not matter one iota, because with your base coat what you're basically doing is just slapping that green on there. It doesn't really matter. There's a hair on I have dogs, there's hair everywhere. There's hair on my brush. But it doesn't really matter with the green. You can just slap it on wherever you want. And I don't really care about getting this little piece because I'm going to paint that like a silver later. I'm going to do probably a silver with a hint of black in it. I think would work well. I think that's something that would work nicely. But what I'm doing here is just picking what I want orange. I'm basically only doing 3 colors, and then I'm going to do like a goldish dry brush on certain spots. And I'm going to do like a sepia or an umber wash. So I don't want to highlight everything. If you start highlighting everything, you're going to go nuts. Like, I'm just not interested in going nuts. So I'm going to highlight specific things. And I can only do half of this panel. I can only do half of the panel at first, right? So what else am I going to do? I'm going to do these guys in here. These guys in here. And I should use a smaller brush. I'm just not. Here we go. And remember, you don't have to be perfect, right? There's no need for perfect. Just get that paint on there. Because our search for perfection is usually what bites us. Honestly, that's usually what we end up with a problem simply because of that. Right? So I am going to paint these little flat areas. I'm going to hit them with a gold dry brush later, but I want that orange underneath when I do that. And then we're going to hit this guy. This guy here in the middle. And we're going to hit this top piece. Like I said, you're not going to hit everything probably. You might want to, but ultimately you don't. And I want to limit how many different colors I use here. Okay, that's literally all I'm doing on that side. I have to obviously come back and do more on that other side. But same deal here. You just kind of pick where you want to hit. And I want to hit this area. Right? You just kind of pick where you're going to hit. I want to hit this. Okay. I can hear a chicken. It sounds like a funny thing to say, but I can hear a chicken because I have chickens. So that's what I hear right now is a chicken. So that's what I've got going for me right now. It's just a chicken outside my window. It's a fairly nice day, so my window's open, so I can hear the chickens outside the window, which is fun. So there we go. Remember to try to stay relaxed when you're painting, because it literally doesn't matter that much. It's just painting. What do you care? Like, you care. I mean, obviously you wouldn't be painting if you didn't care at all. But think about it for a minute. Do you care enough to completely freak out and get upset and worry too much about the painting? Because I don't. I really don't. I care. Obviously, I care. But ultimately, you just want to get the paint on there, because perfection is the enemy of done. Okay? Sometimes, like, I am not entirely happy with the way that paint just went on right there, but I don't care. I am going to leave it alone and just move on, because it'll look fine in the end. And remember not to judge your piece when you're only part way done, because what I can promise you is going to happen is you're going to start looking at your piece and you're going to go, I don't know, this piece, I don't know, it's just not coming together, it's not looking the way I want it to look, all that jazz. And honestly, it won't until you add the wash. That's why we add the wash, because that wash sinks into those grooves. I might also, I'm just deciding, yeah, I'm going to do these guys. Just the tips. Right? Not crazy. Not painting them. I'm just brushing them with the orange. Just brushing them a little bit with the orange. And then come on top of them later. Brush them a little bit with the orange, and then come on top of them with gold later. I don't really care about this piece, to be honest. I mean, I care, but ultimately, I like painting sci-fi. I don't like playing sci-fi. So this will end up being a piece that we set up and have some of our sci-fi characters on. It's not going to be a piece that we regularly use a lot of, because we play some sci-fi. We do play some sci-fi, but we definitely don't play a ton of it, which is fine for us. Some people love sci-fi. I don't love sci-fi campaigns. I prefer fantasy campaigns, but I prefer painting sci-fi terrain because it typically allows me to break out more colors. Because often when you're doing fantasy terrain, it's a historical fantasy setting, right? And sometimes people don't want the greens and the oranges and the pinks and the purples. Sometimes people, they just want more plainness. And I don't want plain. That's okay. That is okay. I like painting sci-fi. But playing sci-fi, I don't know. Sci-fi's just not entirely my thing, you know? Some people love it, I know. I love sci-fi, I do. I just don't like playing it as a campaign. But I like to read sci-fi books. I like to watch sci-fi movies. I adore sci-fi movies. They're some of my favorites. But they're also, it's just, I just don't like sci-fi campaigns, really. And that's all I'm going to do on that one. Because I'm going to add, again, I'm adding more color to this. So this guy is going to get, I need more water on my brush, of course I do. Man, you're only going to watch me paint a handful of panels. And don't stress out too much about the thickness of your paint. Don't worry. Like, if you're happy with the thickness, like, sometimes people tell you should have thicker paint or thinner paint, or you should do a thinner paint with more coats or thicker paint so you don't have to do as many coats. There are as many opinions as there are people. So, I would recommend simply working with what you enjoy. So, I work here with a paint consistency that I change as I'm painting, because sometimes it's like, more water. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, I'm not entirely happy with the way this particular paint is flowing. More water, less water, more paint. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever you're most comfortable with. Because you're going to hear a lot of people, if you share your painting at all, well, I like thinner paint. Good. I'm glad. I love that for you. I prefer a thicker paint right now. Or you're using a paint that's too thin, and they're like, well, thicken up your paint. You can thicken up your paint, but I am working with the consistency I want to work with in that moment. So it's really an individual choice. Now, experiment, okay? Experiment with different thicknesses, and over time, you will likely find that there are certain thicknesses that you really like, certain thicknesses that you really don't, and certain things you'd rather not paint at all, like, no matter the thickness. So I'm just adding a little more orange. Okay. Next up is the door. I'm honestly not putting a ton of orange on the door. I'm just not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to paint a little bit. I'm going to paint a little bit of orange on the door. And at this point, we're going to pause the video and come back. Lucy, write an L on it. The duck egg can go in the tank. Can you write an L? All right. Lucy. Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. I just had Lucy.
That's okay. I said I'm gonna pause the video here. So now I'm gonna go back, finish painting, cut out this section, because I am recording. Okay. And we are going to pick it up in 3, 2, 1. So I'm just doing a little on the door. I actually don't want much on the door because I'm going to do more of the other color. This is basically just to carry that orange through. And this one. I'm not doing all of them. There's a whole bunch of swirls on here that I'm mostly ignoring, because I don't care. Alright. Now I'm just going to pick this guy up, just because he's partially dry, and just keep going. There we go. I need more water. Of course I need more water. More water. There we go. Repeat. But always remember that ultimately it's you doing the painting. You can experiment with techniques, and you should. Okay? Let's be honest, you should 100% experiment with techniques. However, if you don't like a certain technique, you don't have to use it. Okay? You do not have to use a technique you are not enjoying. So if you don't like a certain technique, just don't use it. There's too many times where we're like, well, I should airbrush because everyone says I should airbrush. Do you like airbrushing? I hate airbrushing. Like, I'm good at airbrushing. I got really good at it. I just hate it. I hate having to set up the tools for it, and I just really do not like having to do all that setup, because I do have to set it up, especially because my dry brush equipment is in, not dry brush, airbrush equipment is in the garage. So if I want to do it, I need to actually sit down and do it and go get all the equipment and set it all up. And I don't really like doing it anyway. I'm just pulling some paint over these just because I just want to pull just a little bit of paint over them. Right? Not much. Just a little. Little bit of paint pulled over these. Just a little bit. But my sci-fi stuff does tend to be brighter. What color orange am I using? I think I'm using a red orange. Orange red. I'm using an orange red. So orange red over permanent green is this color combo, which I enjoy. I know some people don't like the bright combinations, but I tend to like bright colors. You couldn't always tell that I like bright colors from some of the things I paint. To be honest, a lot of things I paint are very dark because there's a lot of stone. That's why I figured take the opportunity here just to do something a little bit different. Since this is mostly going to be a piece that's displayed with characters sitting on it. That's the other thing you have to remember. When it's a piece of terrain, you can sometimes go a little bit crazy. Mostly because how many people are going to be... How many people exactly are going to be seeing it? And do you care if they do see it? There we go. Alright. I'm going to finish the front side of the other panels, and then we'll come back and paint the back side of the walls because the floors don't have a back side. So that's what we're going to do. Alright, that's dry. Some of the pieces, like the walls, need to be turned over so we can paint the other side. I'm going to be a little haphazard here just because a lot of this is almost going to disappear when I go over it with the wash, and a lot of it you're not going to see as much of when you're not going to see as much of it when I break out the silver color that I'm going to use next. Paint that, I guess. Remember, you get to decide what you're painting. There's things that I'm just not going to bother with. It's because I don't care. There's certain parts I don't care about. I like these parts, though. I want to highlight them a little bit. I also don't want it, like, I want it a little slap happy here. Because it's almost, I want it to have a little movement, sort of. So I don't want everything to look identical. So when I'm looking for spots to paint, I'm just kind of, I don't want this too thick, this paint. I want it just a smidge translucent. Just a smidge. So I don't really want to cover the green. Just, you know, here's a little orange. Yeah. There we go. Remember, as long as you're happy with it is all that matters. I don't particularly like this set until it gets color on it. So I wanted it to have quite a lot of color. Because this set, if I just painted it in my typical kind of dark colors where I'm using a lot of gray, and I don't think I'd like it at all. Because this has a lot of detail. Okay. Where else do I want to go? Here. Like that. I don't want to do too much on this side because I want to hit the sides with a lot of silver, to be honest. There we go. This one, I want to muck that one a little bit. There we go. I want them mucked up just a little bit. And then, oops, I'm moving all the pieces. Doesn't matter. They're not painted yet. Remember, you're only going to watch me paint a couple of the pieces because there's so many identical pieces here. So here, you kind of look at what you did on the back side and decide what you might do here. I'm going to do these. Like that. And this one. And then I'm going to bring out the silver black next. Yes. As said, I just want to be a little bit more whimsical, which is why I've got brighter colors. I am going to hit it with some dry brushing later. Maybe in an orangey gold over top of these orange spots. I think that could be fun. Got a piece stuck to my arm. There we go. Good enough. Flipping this piece over. They look better when you hit them with the wash, which we'll do after the silver. Right? So here, we're just going to trace that. And then we will come back right away. For you right away. I have to let this all dry. We will come back right away and start hitting it with the silver. And after that, we can start washing because I really don't want to spend too much time on this particular set. So we'll move on pretty quick. All right, that's dry. Now we actually get to start working on this. I've just added some black to this silver, and it's not a super thick paint because I don't want it to be thick. I want it to be a little bit translucent. So we're just going to do the spots where I'd like it to be a little brighter, because as bright as those colors are, they're actually still dark. So we're just going to grab this silvery color, and it is silver. I just added a few drops of black. Okay. Just to make it pretty. Just want it a little bit pretty. And I do like this color. And then this really just becomes about deciding where I want this silver color. Right? Like, I don't want to cover the green. So it's really just a judgment call. Where do I want it? And it's a fairly loose color. Like, I've added quite a lot of water to it. It's not a wash because it doesn't have that much water, but it certainly has enough water that it flows pretty well. There we go. Which is what I want. I want it to move a little after it comes off the brush. I don't want it necessarily to just only sit where I put it. Switch that around. So again, we're only going to do one panel of each type. Okay, we're not going to do more than that on camera. There's not really a ton of reason. So I'm just going to draw a circle, and that just a little bit, and then these guys. And come right up through the center. And here. There. And then here. And I'm only doing half of it at a time because obviously I have to let that dry because I can't touch it. So then we move on to this guy. So this guy, there's a hair on it. I'm just going to drop that silvery black in these little divots. There we go. I'm going to do the edge. And I'm going to drop it in here. And then we're going to go here. Just in this area. Okay. There we go. And I've kind of, when I mixed my paint, what I'm kind of doing is I almost leave it a little bit marbly when I'm doing something like this. So some sections will have a little more black. Some sections will have these ones. Some sections will have a little more silver, only because I want there to be just a little movement. Just a little. Not a ton. I don't need a ton of movement. But if you kind of almost marble it, it looks a little neat. Sometimes. It depends on what you're painting. And then when this is all dry, we're going to hit it with a sepia wash. So we're not going to worry too much. Draw across there. Draw down the centers. I need more paint on my brush. Draw down the centers. Just like that. And a little in there. Okay, we're gonna let that one dry. But it's always better to let it dry and then decide if you want to add more, because you can always add more, right? You can always add more. And yeah, I'm painting the tops with the silvery color of the walls, not of the floors. The floors don't really have that. They just don't. Okay. And you don't even have to, if you're painting something like this, you don't have to paint all the walls the same, by the way. You could do a different color pattern on the walls. You absolutely could. But for the most part, I wanted it to be fairly similar. There, I'm just gonna get that one. Go across the top. Like that. And I didn't want to use a straight silver because I wanted something a little bit darker. And up this way, this one, this one, this one. Good enough. Yeah. Next up, the door. And then we just have one more floor piece to do. And then I will do the other pieces off camera. Okay, so we'll do the rest off camera. But I happen to like using a silver with a little bit of black. There we go. And remember, if you're happy with it, that's literally all that matters. If you like the way it looks, you don't have to worry, right? If you like the way it looks, then you're good. I'm just going to do the inside. There we go. I'm just going to do the inside of the door. Just like that. And we're going to call that one good. And then just a floor piece. And then I'll paint everything else off camera. So again, I'm almost modeling what I did before. And here. But again, you don't have to follow the same pattern. You could do every tile a unique color combination. You're allowed to do that. There's no rules. Or you could just paint them one color. You could just paint them one stony color. And I'm going to add to the center, I'm going to add silver because I want silver in the center here. And then I'm just going to just a little slap here and there. And then call that good. I'm going to let that dry, and then I will come back and we will do the other half of each tile. Then we have to flip over the walls and do the other side. But for now, we're calling it done. Okay, time to keep on painting. So we're just going to finish up on this side. Then we have to do the other side. Now, obviously, the other side only applies to the pieces that have an other side, so we won't have to do the floors, which is nice. There we go. And streak some of that on there. I'm not even being that careful because I'm going to be honest, I don't care that much. Sometimes you just decide you don't really care that much, right? Sometimes you just decide, nah, not worth it. Now, I like this piece, but not enough to worry too much about it. So we're just going to hit it where we want with the silvery color. I've added a little bit more black. It's because I want it a little bit darker. It won't stay dark, but it stays dark enough, right? Like, there we go. It stays dark enough. There we go. And again, we're only painting one of each panel because painting more than that on camera is silly. You don't need to watch me paint the same thing 6 times. But it's still fun to paint it. There we go. Get some of that one in there. There we go. And this one. All right. Then we're going to just hit some of these edge guys. And for me, the real trick with a piece like this is just not worrying about it. This piece is honestly never going to turn out exactly the way I want it to turn out. So it's just kind of better not to worry about it. You kind of do the best you can with what you've got. And you call it good. Ooh, there we go. And you try to mirror on either side, but you don't worry about it that much, to be honest. You try not to worry about it. There we go. And then we'll do this one. There we go. And then I'll paint the matching ones off camera. But remember, it doesn't matter what someone else thinks of your work, right? Like, they might not like what you're doing at all, and that's fine. They don't have to like it. Do you like it? If you like it, then it's good enough. Just dropping some silver on here. There we go. If you like it, it's good enough. It doesn't have to please everybody, right? It only has to please you. So if you're happy with it, then it's good enough. If you're not happy with it, then go back and see what you can do about that. That top there. And then you just, figure out if you want to do something different. Nothing ever stops you from going back and doing it over again. Right? You can always do it again. You can always go back and do it again. So if you're not happy with the way something looks, like, I might touch up some of the orange. I'm not entirely happy with where the orange is hitting. So I might go back and fix that. I might not. Because you certainly don't have to go back and fix anything if you don't want to. So I might go back and fix it. I might not. Because would I like the orange to hit a little differently? Yeah, maybe. But do I want it to hit a little differently enough to go and do it over again? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I feel about it later. Anyway, that is all we're painting on camera. We will come back and flip over the pieces that need to be flipped. And then we will move on to the wash, because we do need to paint the other side before we can do the wash. Okay, that's dry. I'm going to flip them over. Now, to be honest, if I was painting, doing a little more complex job, there are a couple of other things I would do. Okay, I would, for example, hit with a couple more colors. I'm not going to do that because we're deliberately keeping this as simple and easy as we can. So because we're keeping this as simple and easy as we can, we are trying not to make it difficult. And if we just use the simplest of techniques, it'll look fine. And that's what the goal is, right? Just good enough for you. So that's the goal here. So it'll look a lot fancier once we hit it with a couple layers of wash and a little bit of dry brushing. So I had someone comment that they find dry brushing very difficult. I know it is at first. It takes a little practice to get it right. Okay, it does take some practice. So I know that getting it right can be difficult at first because you end up in a situation where you're not sure how much pressure to apply and you're not really sure if it will turn out or if you should even dry brush at all. And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. Depends on the piece. But really, you're not going to know if you're any good at dry brushing until you practice a little bit. It's one of the few techniques that I show on this channel. Now, there are more advanced techniques that I use that take time to master when I'm not painting for this channel. Remember, this channel is quick, easy, anyone can do it, right? So it's okay to be a little bit sloppy, it's okay to be a little bit, it's okay to not be perfect. And because of that, the most advanced technique we've talked about so far is dry brushing. And will I show other techniques? Yeah, maybe eventually, but for now, we're literally just dry brushing. Okay? That's all we're trying to do here. And we're just going to hit this little skull a little bit. Right? We're not hitting too much. If you overdo it, you're not going to like it. Okay, so you just hit a little bit. There. Now we're going to let those dry, and then we'll come back and do the other sides. Then we can move on to washing and then dry brushing. I promise you'll get better at dry brushing as you practice. I know it's a little bit of it. It's the technique that I've shown on this channel that requires the most practice. I promise you'll get it. It's not as hard as it seems at first. But we'll come back, paint the other part of those, and then move on to washing and dry brushing. Okay, that's dry. So we're just going to keep going. We're basically going to mirror what we did on the other side. Remember, we're working on quick and easy and just a touch of silver. That's what we're working on right now, just a touch of silver. We don't want too much silver. But I do like some silver. I do like some silver. It's just a little. And then we're going to do a wash. Remember, if you're not sure... Oops. If you're not sure where to put the color, wing it. Seriously, it's fine. If you're not sure where you want the color, just wing it. Because, honestly, you can go back and go over it. And you can decide, you know what, that didn't work for me. And you just go over it again. It's paint. It's not the end of the entire world. It's just paint. Right? So if you want to go back and fix it, you can do that. So we're going to get this guy. Just a tad. Remember, you can always go fix it, or you cannot. You might be painting it and decide, you know what, it's not perfect. I don't love it, but I also don't want to take the time to fix it. That's okay too. So for me, it'll depend. Like, because this is the quick and easy paint job, this is the just enough paint job, I probably will not go back and fix, because if that's what I'm showing you, which is what I'm doing, quick and easy. There we go. But if that's what we're doing, the quick and easy, then I'm not going to go back, because going back and doing it again, well, that kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? There we go. Okay, I'm going to finish painting the rest of them off camera, and then we will come back and we're going to start with the wash. The wash is where it really stands out. It's not the most advanced technique, but it's a good technique for beginners, because it'll just bring out that detail without having to mess with a bunch of highlighting. Highlighting can be really annoying, and it can take a long time to master. Washing is really, really easy. So we'll come back and do a wash. Okay, that's dry. Now I'm going to apply a fairly thick wash. Ignore that, that's a cat. But the thing with a wash is it's the easiest way. Now, there are other techniques I could show you. Other ways that you can basically get kind of a highlight and recess effect. But washes are the easiest way. They're great ways for beginners. And eventually I might show you some of the other techniques. But remember, this channel is about quick, easy ways that you can paint something that is good enough. Right? This isn't about painting so that we are the top tier best painters. You can learn that. You can. I know that it seems intimidating, and when I first started painting, this is how I painted, and it looks fine. And eventually you're going to want to paint at a different level. You're going to want to level up your painting, and that's an excellent progression to go from this to, I could show you my red dragon, except I'm painting right now. But I've got a red dragon that is one of my best pieces, and he's fantastic. He's got highlights, and he's got all kinds of techniques. The only technique he doesn't have is airbrushing. And that's because I actually really hate airbrushing. But I'm making sure that I get this wash in all the little grooves, because that's the whole point of a wash, It's to get in all the grooves. If you don't get in the grooves, you're wasting your wash. Okay, you want to let it fall in those grooves. And what is a wash? A very thinned down paint. And this will, so the colors looked really bright and they looked almost like they didn't fit. But this brings them back down because I'm using a dark umber wash. If you're curious what color the wash is, I'm using a dark umber. And I added just a little hint of gray to the wash. So I added a tiny smidge of gray paint, one to thicken it up just a little more than I normally would work with, because I usually use pretty thin washes, but I wanted a little thicker option this time. I'm gonna soak up some of these drips. Okay. And then we're going to do this one. But I added just a little bit of gray just to change the tone just a little bit. And you can do that with any wash, whether you're using a pre-made wash or whether you made your own wash. You can always, before you start using it, add a little bit of different color to it. So I could have added a red, or just wanted to tone down the brown just a little. Okay. We will come back and flip the pieces that need to be flipped over, and I will off camera finish putting a wash on the other ones. I know they look dull and grimy. Wait till the wash dries, because as it dries, it sinks into those recesses, which is what you want, okay? And you add more wash in areas where you want it a little bit darker, and just add the normal amount of wash in areas where you want it just kind of a normal, I just keep hitting my mic, but where you just want a normal amount of darkening. So you can see I've added extra wash in some places. It's because I want those places darker. We will come back when that is dry enough for me to flip over the panels that need to be flipped over. Okay, we're just going to flip these guys over, and you can see the difference. Okay, you can see the difference in them. You can see how much darker that wash makes them. Now, if you want them to stay bright, but you still want to use a wash, you would simply use a thinner wash. You certainly do not have to use such a thick wash. Now, I'm using a fairly thick wash because that's the look I want, right? You don't have to use a wash that's as thick as this. I want it to be quite dark. That's why I went with such bright colors. Imagine what would happen if I started with an orange that was really dark. If I had darkened my orange down with a black. Can you imagine how dark that would be with this kind of wash on top? If I had darkened that orange or darkened the green, this would be way too dark. So you kind of have to, at least at the beginning, you have to think about what kind of wash you might use if you're going to use washes. Remember, there's a lot of techniques that aren't washes that we haven't really covered yet. And we will at some point, but right now, this channel is focusing only on just the most basic of techniques. You don't need to get fancy. You don't need to master highlighting if you don't want to. Should you? Maybe should. Now, highlighting takes a while because you have to start understanding how light plays off your pieces. And that can be a little intimidating. The easiest way, if you want to start highlighting, the easiest way to do it is to get yourself a strong flashlight and then basically just use that flashlight to mimic light and shadow so you can see where light hits. There we go. I am going to continue on doing the pieces that are duplicate pieces. And you probably don't need to watch that. It's the same. But we will come back and I'm going to use some gold dry brushing just to lift the color back up. That dry brushing, I know, I've heard from a few people that dry brushing is a harder technique for them to master. I know. And I know the point of this channel is to not introduce difficult techniques, but dry brushing is probably the easiest of the more difficult techniques. Okay, I'm not saying dry brushing is easy or that it doesn't take some practice, but dry brushing is a technique that is easier than some of the other techniques that you can use to give your piece some dimension. You don't need a ton of dimension, and you can skip the dry brushing. I haven't dry brushed everything on this channel because sometimes it's just not really necessary. But I do want to dry brush in this case because I want to lift some of the dimension back up. I'm just going to do it with a gold, and it's primarily going to be on these orange spots. So you see where I'm deepening down that orange? I'm going to relift that orange with a little bit of dry brushing. And we're just going to use a gold, just a basic gold. You don't have to get too fancy with your colors if you don't want to, or if that's not where you are yet. So when I first started, I was using really basic colors like this palette here. This particular piece, I've used extremely basic colors. Basically, they come pretty much from the bottle, except for the silver that I darkened with black. Everything else basically came from a bottle. So you don't have to get fancy with mixing your colors if you're not ready for that yet. I did want to darken that silver just because I didn't like how bright the silver was, even knowing I was going to darken it all with a very dark wash. I still didn't like how bright it was. I don't want this bright. This is the Xenogenesis Cell, and it's kind of like, imagine it's a living, breathing creature that's also turned into terrain. Imagine, like, that's kind of the look I'm going for here. So it's a living, breathing creature that's kind of stuck in place and is almost a building, right? If that's what this is kind of looking like, then it's going to be dark and messy and gross. It's also going to have some life to it. So that's what we're going to do, is use the gold to bring it back to life. There we go. We actually stuck around to paint the entire thing. There we go. We're going to come back when it is time to use that dry brushing technique just to elevate it a little bit. Okay, dry brushing. Dry brushing is actually pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Basically, you take a dry brush, that's why we call it dry brushing, get some paint on it, then you knock most of that paint off. If you can see paint on your brush, you probably have too much. And then you just take your brush and lightly brush it across the surface. Press a little harder if you want a little more gold or whatever color you're using. So I'm primarily targeting the areas with orange, but I'm also hitting other spots. There we go. If you think you have paint on your brush, you probably have too much. Okay, so just take your brush very lightly and start hitting it. Okay, just start hitting it. Goober's falling out of nowhere. Just start hitting it. Remember to tap the paint off your brush. Okay, if you don't tap the paint off your brush, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with too much paint. You don't want that much paint. Okay, so I use a paper towel off to the side where I dip my brush to tap off the paint, and then what I do is a couple of times there will be enough paint on the paper towel that you can just go back and pick it up. So you're not wasting paint. There we go. So I'm primarily targeting the orange, but not completely. I am hitting all the spots, but I am primarily, and yes, I spilled some wash earlier. I am primarily hitting the spots that are orange, but I'm also smacking the other stuff just to raise the color. And if you hit too hard, you just go back with your brush after. So we'll get some of the paint off here, like I hit too hard there. Just take it off. It comes off pretty easily because it's dry paint. Like the paint is pretty dry. There. I'm going to leave it like that because I want it dark and kind of bleh. So that's how we're going to leave it. Okay. Now I am going to let that dry, come back, do the other sides. Okay, let's keep going. So we're just going to lightly hit it with gold. Knock some of that off. Just lightly hit it with gold. Not too much, just a little. Unless you want too much. That's a nice thing about painting stuff for yourself. You can decide how much you want and where you want it. I'm gonna go especially on top of that. Yeah, you just kind of decide where you want to hit and with what. There we go. And then, oops, forgot to knock my brush off. That means you have to take some off. There you go. And I'm going to continue doing these, but I'm going to do most of it off camera. So we will come back and look at what it looks like when it's all dry and all assembled. I'll put it together so you can see what it might look like if you were to use it in a campaign. And just like that, it's dry, it's assembled. It looks decent enough. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to make you happy. If you had fun painting it and you enjoyed the process and you're happy with the result, then it is good enough. And remember, you can always dull down those colors using a dark wash. So if you accidentally went a little too bright, you're okay. That's about it for us today. I hope you'll be back with us next time. Bye!